Let's talk about Hannah. I was talking to Sarah last night, saying, this is what I'm going to talk about. These are the people. And as I said, let's talk about Hannah. Of course, my daughter, Hannah, perks up from behind the couch. What about me? Wrong Hannah. And so we're talking about Hannah, 1 Samuel. Hannah, who was also barren, but was also the favorite, cried out unto God. She was being provoked by the people around her, being made fun of. Scripture uses the word provoked because of her barrenness. Hannah became very desperate. Hannah, in 1 Samuel, got to the point of her, the bottom end of what she could do on her own, being picked at, being made fun of, and being very desperate, earnestly prayed and cried out to God. It talks about that she was so earnestly praying that she wept and became speechless because of her prayer time. In verse 15 of 1 Samuel chapter 1, it talks about the fact that and Hannah poured out her soul. I think that's a great description of what prayer is. That earnest poured out your soul. When you are praying so hard for something, when you're praying really sometimes even interceding for someone else, you give everything that you can to the point that you can give no more. Hannah prayed so hard and so emphatically and so intensely, if you will, that Eli, the prophet, as he came into where she was praying, thought she was drunk. He even called her on it and said, what is up with this? Why are you like this? And of course, she responds back, says, I'm not drunk. This is my story. I'm desperate. I'm hurting. And here's where it is. And she, in the midst of her prayer time, had given a vow unto God, unto the Lord, and said, if you allow me to have a child, I will give him back to you. If you allow me to conceive and have a child, I'll just hear. And she explains this to Eli. And Eli I can just kind of had a mental picture last night when I was thinking about this. I mean, he walks up, he thinks she's drunk because she's blabbering. He goes, what is up with you? Kind of a thing in the Harper paraphrase. And she goes to explain what her struggling is, and she's speechless. All he sees is her mouth move, but no words. And he's like, you're drunk. You're going to have to go. And she gets her composure and says, no, this is my struggle. Eli, I can just picture after he gets the storyline and goes, oops, my bad. He kind of smiles, pats her on her shoulder and goes, go in peace. And scripture says that the God of Israel grant you your petition. Now, as she hears this, something changes in her life. From being desperate and just overwhelmed with sorrow and grief because she hadn't been giving birth, she now has this, as we've talked for years, this tree of life that comes back into her. And she's now no longer depressed, no longer sad. Scripture even said that the sadness left her. And she went and worshiped the Lord for just that promise and the confirmation. As she conceives and bears a son, Samuel, as he's getting to the point of being weaned, I can't imagine her mindset at that point in time going, okay, now I gave this vow. I gave this promise that I've been wanting a child for so long. Now I've got one, but I made the vow. I've now got to give it up. I can't imagine that. I can't process that thought. And I'm sure there was a moment, didn't say it, but I'm sure there was a moment she's like, well, if I don't do it. But then there's the respect and being fearful of God in a good, respectfully way, going, no, I gave my word. So out of obedience, As she had promised in her vow, she walks Samuel to Eli as promised and hands him over. Gave a great prophecy in the midst of it about her journey. And it's really cool to see how God honored Hannah's obedience. She was able to bear, I think it's 3 more sons and 2 daughters, if I remember correctly, in just being obedient. She prayed for a son. And in my context, in my terminology, in her obedience, she still gave her son to someone else into their service. But it impresses me on Hannah's obedience, that as she promised to God, made a covenant with the Lord, and his covenant with her fulfilled, she now had to be fulfilling her side of the bargain. And it impressed me to see how she did it.